2012, when 16-year-old Skylar Neese was brutally murdered. That night, Skylar snuck out for a joyride with her two best friends and never returned home. Skylar's parents, Mary and Dave Neese, searched relentlessly for their daughter, hoping she was still out there somewhere. 6 months later, police learned that Skylar's best friends, Rachel Schoaf and Sheila Eddy, had stabbed her to death and left her body in a remote area. Sheila Eddy was sentenced to life in prison, and Rachel Schoaf was given 30 years.
Skylar Annette Neese was the kind of teenager who left traces of herself everywhere. In the photos taped to her bedroom mirror, in the worn pages of her journals, in the little hearts she'd draw at the corners of her notebooks, and the way she always signed off text messages with "Eily," even to friends she was secretly mad at. She was 16, whip-smart, stubborn, witty. She could memorize entire chapters of a textbook the night before a test, but she also had that sharp teenage tongue, the kind that snapped back when crossed. Her sarcasm was famous. Her loyalty was legendary. Skylar lived in Star City, West Virginia, a quiet little town wrapped in hills and tucked near Morgantown. Her parents, Mary and Dave Neese, worked hard. Dave was a maintenance man at a local hospital. Mary worked in a medical office. They didn't have much, but what they had, they poured into their only daughter. She was their world, and then she was gone. The night of July 5, 2012, was warm, sticky with the kind of Appalachian summer heat that made sleep hard to come by. Skylar had worked her usual shift at Wendy's. She came home, said goodnight to her parents, and retreated to her room around 10:30 p.m. Everything seemed normal, but sometime after midnight, Skylar quietly climbed out of her bedroom window today. Neighbor's surveillance camera would later catch a blurry image. 12:31 a.m. Skylar slipping into the back seat of a sedan parked just down the street. She left her phone charger, her toothbrush, and all of her personal items behind. No bag, no note, just her, disappearing into the night. She was never seen alive again. The next morning, Dave knocked on her bedroom door to wake her for work. No answer. He opened the door and saw the bed untouched. No Skylar. Just the screen on her window pushed out at first. Her parents thought maybe she had sneaked out with friends and overslept somewhere. She'd done that once before, not often, but once was enough to plant that seed. But as hours passed with no call, no text, no word, panic set in. By noon, they reported her missing, but police didn't take it seriously at first. Skylar was 16, a teenager, probably just ran away. Give it a few days, they said. She'll turn up. But Skylar's parents knew better. She hadn't taken money. She hadn't packed a thing. She hadn't said goodbye. She hadn't even brought her contact lens case. As the hours turned into days, Skylar's friends began to rally. One in particular stood out. Sheila Eddy, Skylar's childhood best friend. Blonde, charismatic, popular. She was the one always glued to Skylar's side in old photos. Matching outfits, sleepovers, inside jokes. Now she was sobbing on the Neese family's couch, hugging Mary, whispering, "I just want her to come home." She even passed out missing posters with Dave, posted tributes on Twitter, wrote #ComeHomeSkylar, like it was a prayer, and alongside Sheila was Rachel Schoaf, another friend from school. Quieter, more reserved. She and Sheila had gotten close in recent months. Too close, Skylar had once said. Something had shifted. She felt left out, pushed aside. Still, Rachel helped spread the word. She and Sheila claimed they had picked up Skylar that night around midnight, that they had driven around, smoked some weed, and dropped her back off down the street so she could sneak home unnoticed. That was their story. It stayed their story for months, but Skylar didn't come back, and something didn't sit right with Mary and Dave. Their daughter wasn't the type to vanish. She didn't do drugs. She didn't have a secret boyfriend. She had plans, college, a career, a life. And she was scared of the dark. Skylar didn't just walk away. And that surveillance footage, the grainy image of her getting into a car at 12:31 a.m., it didn't match Sheila and Rachel's timeline. They had said they picked her up around 11 p.m., not 12:30. When investigators pressed them, they claimed they had misremembered, that it was all a blur, but the police were watching now. And so was the FBI. Over the next 6 months, the investigation turned inward, towards Skylar's social circle. The detectives listened, tracked phones, monitored social media. They saw what everyone else saw, tweets from Skylar's account that, in hindsight, sounded like warning shots. Sick of being treated like I'm nothing. You doing SHD behind my back? Consider yourself done. Asterisk, people pretend so well. It's disgusting. Then there was this one, posted a month before she disappeared. Just know, I know. It was directed at someone. And police were starting to suspect who. Because beneath Sheila's performative grief, something was breaking. And under Rachel's tightly controlled smile, something was unraveling. By late 2012, the police had stopped calling Sheila, Eddie, and Rachel Schoaf witnesses. They were now subjects of a quiet but intensifying investigation. Sheila still acted normal, posting selfies, going to school, even tweeting about her outfits and boys. She played the part of the grieving best friend perfectly. Too perfectly. But Rachel was slipping. Her parents were fighting. Her behavior was erratic. She was prone to sudden outbursts, emotional breakdowns. She was seeing a psychiatrist. The pressure of the secret, whatever it was, had begun to erode her from the inside out. That on December 28, 2012, 5 months after Skylar disappeared, Rachel suffered a complete breakdown. Screaming, crying, violent. Her mother called 911. Rachel was taken to a mental health facility, and 5 days later, she cracked. January 3, 2013. In a quiet room, with her lawyer and a detective present, Rachel Schoaf finally spoke the truth. We stabbed her. Me and Sheila. We didn't like her anymore. That was it. No rage. No accident. No threat. No coercion. Just cold, calculated murder. The plan had been in the works for weeks. They had discussed it on messaging apps. In person. In whispers. They had agreed on a date, a method, even what to wear. On the night of July 5th, they brought kitchen knives from their homes. They wore hoodies and jeans to hide any blood. They picked up Skylar just after midnight, as she climbed out her window. Thinking they were going for a drive, maybe to smoke, maybe to talk, they drove her to a remote spot in Wayne Township, Pennsylvania, just across the state line. A place they'd visited before. A wooded area where teenagers sometimes hung out. Skylar followed them willingly into the trees. Then, on a signal, they counted to 3. They began stabbing her. Skylar fought. She screamed. She ran. But they were prepared. Together, they overpowered her. One held her down. The other stabbed her over and over. According to Rachel, Skylar's last words were, "Why?" They didn't answer. When it was over, they tried to bury her, but the ground was too hard. So they covered her with branches, leaves, and rocks, and left her there. Then they went home, showered, slept, and woke up to a missing person report. The FBI and state police, armed with Rachel's confession, drove out to the site she described. The landscape was unforgiving, cold, quiet. But after days of searching, they found her. January 16, 2013. Skylar Neese's remains were discovered under a pile of brush in the Pennsylvania woods. She had been there for 6 months, alone. The recovery team was silent. Even the most seasoned agents were shaken. The body had decomposed, but not enough to hide the violence. Skylar had been stabbed dozens of times. Defensive wounds showed she had fought hard. Every last second, news broke fast. The town of Star City stopped cold. Skylar's parents, who had clung to hope, who had passed out flyers and spoken to every reporter they could find, collapsed. Their world, already cracked, now shattered completely. And the public, they wanted to know, why? Why would 2 girls, 2 best friends, kill a third? The answer? We didn't like her anymore. That was all Rachel would say. But the truth, the real truth, was more complicated. Skylar, Rachel, and Sheila had been inseparable. But teenage friendships, especially among girls that age, are layered. Part love, part rivalry, part control. There were whispers that Rachel and Sheila had begun a romantic relationship. That Skylar knew. That she didn't approve, or worse, threatened to expose them. There were fights, tweets, secrets, and something inside Sheila, maybe inside both of them, decided Skylar was a problem, and instead of drifting apart or blocking her online or letting high school drama die the way it usually does, they chose murder. Once Skylar's remains were identified in early 2013, authorities held back one key piece of information. They hadn't arrested Sheila Eddie yet. Rachel Schoaf was cooperating. She had confessed. She had led them to the body. But Sheila, the one who had hugged Skylar's mother, cried on their couch, tweeted daily about missing her bestie, was still walking the halls of University High School like nothing had happened. Investigators wanted more. They wanted airtight evidence. They wanted to hear her say, I teed at us, oh, they wired up Rachel in the days after the body was found, but before arrests were made, Rachel and Sheila were brought together again, secretly monitored, mic'd, and recorded. What Sheila said on those recordings isn't all public, but enough leaked out. At one point, Rachel said, they know. Sheila didn't flinch, didn't panic. She simply said, then we're screwed. It was chilling, not denial, not remorse, just calculation. May 1st, 2013. Rachel Schoaf was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. Prosecutors offered a deal in exchange for her confession and cooperation. She pleaded guilty and agreed to testify against Sheila. Still, Sheila remained free, for now. That same month, she went to prom. Posted photos, smiling, arm around her date, dressed in silver. The comments section filled with admiration. So pretty, queen. No one knew. Or maybe they just didn't wanna. September 6th, 2013. Sheila Eddy was arrested, charged with first-degree murder. The moment came in a grocery store parking lot. No warning. Officers surrounded her car. She was pulled out in front of shoppers, hands zip-tied behind her back. The mugshot would soon go viral. A pretty, petite 17-year-old girl staring ahead like she was bored. When the news hit, Star City froze. This girl? The one who brought cookies to bake sales? Who cried on TV about Skylar? The one who called Skylar her sister? Sheila Eddy had fooled nearly everyone. Everyone but Skylar. In January 2014, Sheila stood before a judge and pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. The courtroom was silent. Skylar's parents sat in the front row. Sheila admitted to everything. The plan, the stabbing, the covering up, and walking away. The judge sentenced her to life in prison with mercy, meaning she would be eligible for parole after 15 years. Rachel was sentenced to 30 years. She would also be eligible for parole, but only after serving at least 10. Skylar's parents spoke that day. Dave Neese, Skylar's father, looked Sheila in the eyes and said, you girls planned it. You lied to us. You left her in the woods, like a piece of trash. I hope you both rot in hell. Mary Neese couldn't speak. She just wept in the years since. The shock has never fully lifted. Skylar's story has become a cautionary tale, a case study in sociopathy, a horror story hiding in the skin of a teenage drama. But for those who knew her, she was not a symbol. She was a girl who loved books, who watched Law and Order religiously, who took pride in doing things right, who had dreams, plans, a future, and who was murdered by the people she trusted most. After the trials ended, the courtroom emptied, and the media moved on. Dave and Mary Neese were left with the quiet, the kind of quiet that hums through a girl's bedroom when the laughter has been gone too long, the kind that clings to walls, settles into pillows, weaves through old birthday cards and honor roll certificates, the kind that never, ever goes away. They kept Skylar's room untouched for a long time. Her bed still made, books still stacked, her black Converse sitting neatly under the desk. Her favorite hoodie, the red one, still hung on the back of her chair. Her scent, faint but present, lingered for months. But what lingered more was the question, why? Rachel had confessed. Sheila had pled guilty. The facts were no longer in dispute. But the motive remained chilling in its emptiness. We just didn't like her anymore. That's what they said. But the Neeses and the world couldn't accept that. Because it wasn't just dislike. It was planning, deception, execution. It was evil wearing the face of teen friendship. And it had taken their only daughter in 2013. The Neeses began pushing for change, a legacy that might save someone else's child. West Virginia, at the time, had a policy that delayed public alerts for missing teens if they were suspected runaways. Skylar's case had fallen through that gap. By the time law enforcement took it seriously, hours had passed, precious hours when she might have been found. Mary and Dave pushed lawmakers. They testified. They refused to let Skylar's name become a footnote. The result, Skylar's Law, passed unanimously in West Virginia in 2013. The law now requires an immediate public alert, similar to an Amber Alert, for any missing child, not just those believed to be abducted. It was a small measure. But it meant something lasting. Sheila Eddy is currently serving her life sentence at Lakin Correctional Center in West Virginia. She is eligible for parole in 2028, when she will be just 33 years old. Rachel Schoaf is serving her sentence at the same facility. Her behavior has been reportedly quiet, compliant. She expressed remorse in court. She has written apologies, but forgiveness? That doesn't live in the Neese household. Dave has said plainly, they took our daughter, our only child, and dumped her like garbage. There's no forgiveness for that. And Mary? She rarely speaks publicly now, but her grief shows up every July, every birthday, every morning at 12:31 a.m., when she wakes up and remembers the time Skylar climbed out the window and never came back. Skylar's legacy has rippled beyond West Virginia. Her story has been told on Dateline, 48 Hours, Dr. Phil, and countless podcasts. Books have been written. True crime analysts have studied the case for its psychology, how narcissism and groupthink among teens can spiral into sociopathy. Her case is taught in criminal justice courses, but her parents don't need studies. They know what evil looks like. They saw it in the eyes of two girls they once welcomed into their home. And what of Skylar? She was not perfect. She was not easy. She was not meek, but she was good. She was loved. She mattered, and she still does. Every time a child is reported missing and gets help faster, that's Skylar. Every time a teacher looks a little closer at a broken friendship, that's Skylar. Every time a parent hugs their child a little longer after hearing her story, that's Skylar. Because even in death, she speaks. And what she says most clearly is this: be careful who you trust. Even your best friends can be monsters.